Alrighty. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me in chat here, Cherry. It's nice to be able to have a little talk before I start getting into things as well. But yeah, no, hopefully, Nightbot's still pretty new for me, so I'll have a bit of a play around with it later on and try to smooth things out here and there as we kind of get along. But yeah, no, so if you missed yesterday's stream, I had some random chatters in with me back then too, but I was kind of working on a bit of an Indian subcontinent, and particularly I worked a lot with the Ashura or Shura, and yeah. One moment, sorry. The nasty cold that took me out last week, I'm mostly better now, but my voice is still a bit groggy. But yeah, so I kind of built a lot around with a kind of Ashura race yesterday. And the direction we kind of went involves basically the creation, preservation, and destruction associated with like the big three Hindu deities of like Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And basically, the kind of theme we went with is like the humans and the people of the place, along with the Shura and the gods and whatnot, reflect the creation, preservation, and destruction of certain elements. And part of that basically involved defining what the Shura were going to be, because basically I don't want every kind of quote-unquote race to be a humanoid race. So in this case, we ended up making the Shura a bit more monstrous and bestial. Like the smallest of them is going to be like the size of a boulder. They're basically going to be some kind of like monstrous beast race that pretty much just want to like devour everything as part of their nature of destruction. Part of that also involved us just thinking a little bit about how that would connect with other bestial races in the worldview at large, such as like the Wolfkin kind of tribes, the Foxian kind of tribes, etc. But I think the direction I've kind of decided to go in is keep the Shura separate as larger, more monstrous entities that may not necessarily have a connection with the individual lycanthrope tribes, essentially. Because I wanted to keep the creation and destruction and the kind of elemental manipulation aspects separate from the beast people, if that makes a little bit of sense there. But yeah, not really sure where I kind of want to start off today. Cherry, if you're still here, do you have any kind of ideas or suggestions or random things you kind of want to throw at me, and I'll see if I can make something work with any of that? If so, I'm welcome to take your opinion on board. If not, I might just have a little bit of a look around in my notes and see what I can't pull out to work with something. Since I was working on the Eastern continent, I can maybe take a look at some of these other cultures here. So I think I'm kind of mostly happy with what I've done with this Indian part for now. So let's move maybe on to Japan. Let's get some brainstorming going. Cool. So when you think of Japan, we definitely think of samurai, ninja, what else? Shinto. Let's see, Shinto's always been something I've heard a lot about in like anime and whatnot, but I've never really heard a lot about the system as a whole, so let's see if we can't learn anything more about Shinto. So it's the indigenous religion of Japan, which involves the worship of the deities there. So it has no founder, it has no sacred scripts or texts, no centralized religious authority. That's interesting. Okay. Now, who are the major kami in Shinto? One of the things we also want to do is like look at the shrine system of Japan's gods. Because I believe how they kind of set it up is they have different kinds of temples and shrines set up to different gods for a few different purposes, which is something I've always found a little bit interesting. So maybe we can also add like shrine maidens. Shrine maidens are really cool. Alright. So, three of the big ones, unsurprisingly, are going to be these ones, so let me list them down a bit separately. Over here. So we are of course going to have Amaterasu, Amaterasu, let me see if I can spell it right first. Amaterasu, cool. Then we also have Tsukuyomi, Susanoo. Probably going to butcher most of these. Nariokami, Hachiman, Tenji. Then we have the duo of Izanagi and Izanami. Along with Ryujin, Kagusuchi, as well as Konohana Sakuya Muhime. Okay, that's quite a few. I'll see if there's any more kind of major ones to keep in mind, but I think we got the big ones already listed there. We also have Fujin, Raijin. I know those are also some big ones. Apart from that, I think we're pretty good on most of those. So some of the things to keep in mind are going to be just keeping in mind the other kind of gods we've used for other power systems. So what we want to do is try to stay away from like overlapping. So let's keep in mind some general things here. So we already have creation, destruction, preservation / balance from the kind of Indian deities. We also have a light god. Then we also need to think about the Greek gods and the Norse gods and the Egyptian gods. So those are going to be like the other three big ones. And I also want to do something with like the Aztec gods and the what was it? The some of the African gods as well. So, Norse pantheon, Egyptian pantheon, Aztec pantheon, African pantheon, and I think those are mostly the ones I want to do. So the Greek ones, we need to have the big three for sure. So Poseidon, Zeus, Hades. So that would be a sea god, a sky god, and underworld god. And I think we used a couple other of the Greek gods too. So let me just bring up my notes. And I'll see which ones we took an interest in. Apart from that, we also have like the Dwarven Allfather, the Elves, World Tree. There's going to be a bit more kind of nature-based ones. Okay, so we got Sky, Sea, Underworld, as well as Athena, which is going to be Wisdom and Warcraft. Then we also have Hermes for messengers and travel, along with I think it was Aphrodite for like beauty, love, crafts, etc. Cool. So those are the kinds of ones we've already used here. So now, I need to think a bit about the other kinds of worldview gods that are going to be a thing, to avoid kind of stepping on any toes there, because well, we are going to pretty much have a few different underworlds here and there. I kind of want to step away from having like multiple sun gods, or multiple wind gods, or multiple lightning gods, for example. So, in that case, I need to think about which gods are most significant to which religions, or faiths, just to kind of try to prioritize having the main ones and the main kinds of areas without really overlapping them anywhere else. And in the case that we do have some overlap, like with maybe Thor and Zeus, both being like associated with a lot of lightning and whatnot. In the case of Zeus, I might look more into it being an overall sky god rather than the association with lightning, and then I can kind of save thunder and lightning exclusively for Thor, for example. Now that does mean I can't really use the thunder and lightning one from the Japanese system, because I think Thor is probably a more important god to use for that kind of basis. But it also means I need to think about the winds and the rain. Since lightning is often associated a lot with storms and wind and rain, it might make sense to have like one overall kind of storm god, rather than limiting it as much. So if I do end up taking Thor, maybe I can make him more of a god of strength to free up the weather kind of system elsewhere. Now with that said, I know like Raijin and Fusion, etc., are nice kind of combo god set for these weather systems that I could use. I'm thinking I might want to save the weather for the Aztec pantheon more so, because I think like the only like real #1 well-known Aztec Mayan Inca god is Quetzalcoatl, and I think that has a lot to do with the weather and wind and rain and storms, so we might save that for there. So let me just cross-reference my little notes here. So we are going to look at Raijin, god of thunder and lightning, Fusion, god of wind. Tenjin was learning and scholarship. Region is the dragon god of the sea. Okay, so that's more Poseidon's area. Now, Amaterasu, the sun goddess. I know she's the central deity of Shinto, but the good thing about Shinto is, since it has so many diversified gods, which are all revered in their own way, having a central deity I feel is less important for this system here, especially in equivalence to Ra's stature as the sun god in the kind of Egyptian pantheon. So I think we're going to do like the sun, the moon, the stars. They're kind of like the celestial deities off in the Egyptian world. So let's get rid of you here. Cool. And Tsukuyomi will be the same. Susanoo also ties in with the weather. Now, I think the big two I really want to look at here is Nagi and Izanami. Now, I know they are created deities as well. So let's take a look at them a little bit. So they created the islands of Japan and many of the other kami. Okay. Yeah, I think that's going to kind of overlap with the Indian deities as well. So let's take a look at who is the underworld deity of Shinto. You're a fire god. We'll get rid of you there. Okay, so so the Shinto underworld is Yomi. Tell me more about Yomi. Yomi is the realm where souls go after death, dark and desolate. Izanami becomes the ruler of Yomi after a death. Okay. Izanagi, stricken with grief, descends to Yomi to bring her back. She's already in the food of Yomi, which binds her to the underworld. Izanami urges Izanagi not to look at her, but when he does, he sees that she has become a decaying corpse. Upon reaching the boundary between Yomi and the world of living, Izanagi blocks the entrance with a huge boulder, sealing Izanami inside. Before the entrance is sealed, Izanami curses Izanagi, declaring that she will take 1,000 lives each day. In response, Izanagi vows to bring forth 1,500 lives each day, symbolizing the balance between life and death. Interesting. Okay. So I guess we can end up doing Izanagi and Izanami. But we can treat them as more of life and death rather than how do I put it? Creator gods, even if they are technically creator gods. Now, let me just mark a few of these other ones off my list. So, Tenjin was God of Learning and Scholarship. Hachiman was War. Nari is Agriculture. And Kono is a bit more naturey. I think we're good with just having the two big ones here. That feels pretty fitting. Cool, alright. And let's bring up some notes for the underworld, known as Yomi. Cool. Now, the lore that kind of originates with Izanagi and Izanami involves them both going to the underworld and being down there, essentially. So I kind of like playing with a bit of an idea, saying that both of these gods are technically dead. Both gods technically dead. I feel like we can do something interesting there at some point, potentially. Now, Yomi is the underworld with the souls reside. Dark, shadowy world. Okay. Devoid of light and life. Light of perpetual night. Okay. The entrance to Yomi is often portrayed as a cave or a large pit, marking the transition from the world of the living to the world of the dead. Okay. No, that's good. So, if anyone here was here when we were kind of dabbling with a Greek underworld, we mentioned having some kind of like cave that people descend into, and I think we can better repurpose that idea here. especially given the myth of the cave and the boulder that signifies life and death within this state. So Yomi is basically a very bleak and barren environment. Okay. The most famous story involving Yomi is the descent of Izanagi. Yep. What else do we have? In Shinto belief, contact with death and the dead is considered polluting. When Izanagi returns from Yomi, he undergoes a ritual to cleanse himself of the impurity. Purification process is a fundamental aspect of Shinto practice, reflecting the importance of maintaining purity and avoiding the pollution of death. Cool, so if we have players or some kind of campaign where they die in this area, we can do something with that there. So Yomi versus other afterlife concepts. Unlike the Western concept of heaven and hell, Yomi is not a place of punishment or reward. It's more of a neutral shadow realm where all souls go. Okay. Now, concept of Yomi has influenced various aspects. Yep. Okay, I think we're pretty good there for now. So, what I might do is just bring up a little notepad here for underworlds. Because basically, in the central continent, the main kind of underworld is going to be the Greek Hell, and then the Eastern continent is going to be Japanese. Northern continent is going to be the Norse underworld. Western continent is going to be a Egyptian underworld. And the southern continent will be some kind of Aztec underworld, maybe. Although I don't really know if they have an underworld. I'll find that out when we kind of get there. Now, with that said, as we were kind of working on the Indian stuff yesterday, we did note that part of that cycle over there involves reincarnation. And that's going to play a bit of a factor on the underworld aspect. Same with like the central continent, where we had some stuff going on with the demons and angels. So I think we need to consider how that might impact things. So I think by default, dying on the above continents leads one to the above underworlds. Unless killed by explicit means, such as being devoured by a Shura in the east, results in reincarnation within the samsara cycle. Demons / angels in the central, results in reincarnation within the heaven-hell dynamic, etc., etc. We also need to think about how undead factor into play. Cool. So I think we'll worry about the undead part a little bit more on the different continents once we do finish resolving the underworlds on each continent. I think having one kind of underworld on each continent is a pretty good mix of things. Now, underworld at sea, underworld in space is also something we need to consider. Because we can probably do a few things interesting there. I like to imagine like anyone who kind of dies at sea probably doesn't get to go to any kind of underworld. Maybe they get devoured by Leviathan, or maybe they kind of just like drown and become like underwater zombies or something like that. We can play a bit more about that when we kind of get there. Now, I'm sure there are a couple more things here we can kind of work with in terms of a lot of Japanese culture for classes or power archetypes. So let's think about what kinds of classes in feudal Japan would make interesting classes in an RPG. For example, ninjas and samurai. Now, we could also have some kind of geisha thing going on potentially. Okay. Samurai, we also have Ronin, of course. We also have Onmyoji, which are basically kind of like shamans or exorcists. We have the Sohei, which are warrior monks. I think I associate that a lot more with China. We're going to do more of the martial arts there, I'd say. Ninja slash Konichi. And I think that is most of it. So Shinobi will kind of tie in there as well. Miko, that's the word for Shrine Maiden I was thinking of. Cool. So we've got a few things we can kind of work with here. So now we kind of think about how we'd want to put them together in terms of the play system. So we... all of these are pretty interesting class archetypes which could basically make their own kind of system. So far for now, we've only been really doing like one or maybe two kind of power systems or based on the class archetypes per nation. But when you're working with such an interesting and diverse culture like Japan, there really is so much you can really do with things there. Especially considering like how famous and popular a lot of these quote-unquote classes are, especially samurai and ninja, because everyone kind of loves the idea of playing in a worldview around those kinds of concepts, I reckon. So what can samurai do? What can ninja do? What could Miko do? As well as potentially geisha and onmyoji. So first let's look at what is the difference between Miko and onmyoji. Now I know there's going to be some pretty obvious differences off the bat, but what I'm kind of thinking here is maybe we can combine the onmyoji and Shrine Maidens into a single kind of thing. Or maybe it's better not to. So the Miko can maybe be like servants of gods, then the onmyoji can be servants of spirits, closer to shamanism. Cool. That might be a better way of going about it. What kind of powers slash abilities would a geisha have? Now, geishas are mostly like entertainers, artists, and like socialists. So charms, music, dance, etc., etc. There are some interesting things I feel it could do. I'm imagining like one of the class archetypes in D&D being a bard. Like they're always known for basically the power of their music, but what I've also always loved is like the power of dance, basically. And I've always wanted to have like some kind of class archetype that takes advantage of like the power of dance in some form of fashion. Now. There can also be some kind of assassin. That'd be interesting as well. Or something emotion based. Yeah, I like something that ties in with emotions and dance a little bit. So, the power of love, the power of anger and fury, things like that. Basically, invigorating one's emotions through a series of dances. So I'll say, maybe, 3 main dance types that invoke emotional states of happiness, sadness, and anger. And one of the things I'm going to have to do at some point is look at the kind of emotion wheel, or the wheel of feelings. Because I feel like that's going to be a bit important to get a proper gauge of some of these emotions that are experienced. So let me see. What's a good one I can reference? Are they all the same, or are there differences? Okay, they do all seem a little bit different. Let's see. What is the best wheel of emotions? What is the most well known? Okay, so apparently the Plotchik wheel is. So let's take a look at this one specifically. Because this seems to have the a good measure. Just see if I can get a good resolution image as reference. Let's see what I can find here. Hopefully shouldn't take me too long. There we go. Let's try this. There we go. Cool. So, Plotchik's Wheel of Emotion. So there we have all the positive and negative emotions kind of associated with it. So it doesn't directly like include happiness, sadness, and anger, but there is a pretty good range of emotion there. Now, the thing with this in particular is that I do want to like have some kind of other art forms that, or like forms of culture that may also like take power from or influence the emotions of other, because I think like some kind of bardic instrumental kind of school of class could also play in pretty well with this aspect. And the main issue is like I don't really want to have them overlap too much, or ideally if possible I want there to be some kind of big difference between them. Alternatively, I could combine basically song and dance into a single thing, but I feel like song, dance, and even music itself can like produce different effects potentially. Especially since the obvious differences are like one is very visual and one is very sound based. Now, with that said, let's think about some of these emotions and basically what kind of influence one could have over them. So I imagine like the innermost layer, like ecstasy and rage and grief, would be pretty easy to be able to like come up with some kind of system to influence these emotions via either song or dance. Whereas in the case of dance, I feel dance is much more limited in what it can potentially kind of influence, whereas with music, I feel like there's more of an argument to do like sound waves with attacks, or like piercing and shrieking sounds with like different kinds of instruments and like actual sound-based attacks. Whereas on the other side with like an actual sing-song bardly music, kind of falls more into the charm category and whatnot too. The thing with that is I need to be careful with overlap in those areas too, because we already have a pseudo kind of political speech system going on with like the power of voice and command in the kind of Roman Empire there. We also have what's it called? The other one I had in mind, the optics and acoustics kind of magic school, basically the power of sound there. So I think dance is probably going to be the most appropriate method of influencing emotions. So, performs a dance which instills a singular, all-encompassing, then overwhelming emotion in the recipients or the viewers of the dance. Cool. So imagine like war dances, love dances, some interesting things like that. There's really a lot you could do with it. And I do like the idea of dance being a big part of this culture here, not only in terms of the geisha, but maybe we can also do like the Miko. So maybe do dance-based rituals to borrow powers from the gods. So I'm gonna have to probably look at Izanagi and Izanami a little bit more to kind of get an idea of what kind of powers they have, but basically life and death will be the big things here. So how would we want to handle that in this case? So dance of life can maybe, I feel like bringing people to life is going to be a big question mark kind of thing. We'll kind of put that on the back burner for now. But I think like literally being able to cause death or life by dancing is going to be busted for obvious reasons. So while death and life might be the inspiration for the system, I'm thinking maybe like rather than more of a crowd control effect like the geisha one might do. Maybe this is a literal healing slash damage dealing dance in some fashion. Cool, because I did mention before, like I want healing to be a bit more of a niche thing. So for example, so far in the central continent, the only real people we have capable of any form of healing are basically like the Church of Light or whatever we're kind of doing with that there. And or maybe some kind of alchemical based system. Now, with that said, I feel like the alchemy system being more of like items, technology, ingenuity is a bit more separate from an actual literal power that certain individuals can kind of harness. So I'm okay with having a bit of a double up there, but maybe limiting it, the healing, etc., to like one kind of thing per continent will be good for now. Cool, I think I'm happy with that. Now, the Onmyoji basically servants of spirits, so I'm thinking like Shikigami and all that. Now, I need to think a bit more about how to handle spirits, essentially, because basically, in the central continent, we're going to have some kind of like ogre shaman, which basically takes on the spirits of one's ancestors specifically, I think it was. And that's more so in relation to basically like borrowing the power of more powerful ogre ancestors. There's a few different things we can kind of do with that here, because you can also think of like nature spirits or like animal spirits, spirits of like other races or cultures potentially, things like that. So let's see what we can find about what kinds of spirits do Onmyoji commune with. Okay, so they commune with natural elements, the afterlife, cosmic forces. I think Shikigami are the big ones that I really wanted to kind of tie into. Shikigami tend to take various forms, such as animals, humanoid figures, and elemental forces. Cool, so I'm thinking of I just realized I need to include one more important thing here, yokai. We definitely want to do something with yokai. Servants of spirits, so let's take a look at yokai first. So yokai are a broad category of supernatural creatures, spirits and demons in Japanese folklore. Onmyoji might interact with yokai to exercise them, harness their power, or seek their assistance. I'm kind of liking the idea of the Onmyoji servants of spirits, servants of... Ooh. Okay. Now, I was thinking of maybe tying the Onmyoji in with yokai, but I think Shikigami is such a unique thing that I really want to tie them in a bit more here. So let's see, tell me more about Shikigami. Because I'm imagining like the little paper talismans, etc. Like maybe, so you know how they have like their little paper talismans that sometimes they've got their little like paper men that sometimes float around. Maybe what we can do is basically make Shikigami out of like paper in the form of animals, and animal spirits can kind of inhabit them. So they're basically like paper bears with like the ferocity and strength of the bear. That sounds really cool, to be honest. Yeah, let's go with that. Onmyoji creates origami paper Talismans of animalistic spirits. Animals can possess these Shikigami talismans, essentially allowing Onmyoji to summon wild bears to do their bidding at will. So it's more like a summoner, if anything. I like the idea of that. Cool. Now, Samurai and Ninja are going to be a bit more complex, because basically I want to give people the ability to play as martial classes without martial classes basically feeling weak in comparison to magic classes. Like, I still want them to be able to do something special within their means, kind of outside of anything else that is really going on. Like, I don't want a magic user to be able to just pick up a kunai and be able to do all the shit that a ninja can. Aside from just like the physical aspect. So, how can we create a unique power system for samurai and ninja? Okay, so the samurai have the Bushido code. That could be an interesting thing to do. And the ninja have ninjutsu, of course. Let's think about this a little bit. Cool. So, Bushido code. The samurai's abilities are tied to this Bushido code, which emphasize virtues. Track the samurai's adherence to the Bushido code. Actions in line with Bushido principles. Increase the gauge, granting access to powerful abilities or buffs. And its honorable actions do the same. Okay, so let's say Bushido code. Samurai are a very honor-based class. When one becomes a samurai, one bows to their own individual unique Bushido code, so long as one manages to give me one moment here. Okay, so Bushido code. Now, I like the idea of the Bushido code because it's similar to like the vow or the oath a paladin makes. So I can do something similar to them as to what I would with a paladin or whatever else elsewhere. So how would that work in a gameplay aspect? Because I'm thinking like the samurai, of course, are going to be most known for using their katana, so maybe we can basically give the katana like a unique property. So I think I've mentioned briefly before, but in terms of weaponry, I want like slashing weapons to deal a bleed and like piercing weapons to basically do piercing damage. But maybe with katana, we can say if a samurai is using a katana, so long as they stay true to their Bushido code, maybe their weapons classify as both like slashing and piercing at the same time, or something like that. Okay, so let's see. So long as it manages to adhere to their Bushido code. Their katana strikes fast, hard, and true. Katanas are granted the benefit of both slashing and piercing weapons. Now, this feels like something that would really have to be play tested to really kind of get a good grip on. But this reminds me of like sort of to how we're going to have paladins basically make an oath with these angels, and if they break it, then they become oath breakers, and they kind of go from like the virtue of chastity to the sin of lust, for example. We can do something similar here with the Ronin, perchance. So maybe in this case, a samurai who breaks their Bushido code becomes a Ronin. Ronin get the same benefit of the katana's slashing and piercing, but only if they do the opposite of their Bushido code. For example, only attacking enemies from behind and not fighting with honor. Cool. Because basically, with that little system I mentioned before, with like piercing and slashing weapons, for the armor penetration and like the true damage from bleed, how it's going to work is basically going to be pretty broken in theory by combining those two effects into one, because slashing damage only really gets a lot of effects out of getting through most of the opposition's armor, whereas piercing damage, while it helps you get through the armor, it might not necessarily deal more damage directly when hitting an enemy past it. So if you have the piercing property which helps you get past that armor to deal more slashing damage to the opponent, the bleed damage that can come from it will be fairly significant, I would say, in terms of how we're ideally going to build this little system here. Cool. Now, let's think a little bit about ninjutsu. Tell me about ninjutsu. So, elemental ninjutsu is often like access to elemental techniques with different effects like damage, control, and utility. And then there's also shadow arts, techniques related to shadows such as creating clones, teleporting short distances, or blending into shadows for temporary invisibility. I think that's what I kind of like the idea of the most, because it fits the kind of like ninja archetype that people like to do with a lot of like the espionage, the stealth, the infiltration, guerrilla warfare tactics, things like that. Cool, so we can literally just say like anything involving shadows, essentially. And I think that gives a pretty interesting flavor in what people can do with this kind of stuff. But it also means I'm going to have to think more about how to incorporate like lighting and shadow and darkness techniques into the worldview here. Now, with that said, is there anything else here we kind of want to tie in? Let's see. Yes, the yokai. So, tell me about Japanese yokai and what are the most famous examples of yokai. So we're obviously going to have like Kitsune, Yukihime, Kappa, Tengu, Oni. Some pretty major ones there. Tanuki. What's the Yurei? Yurei are spirits of the dead who have not found peace. Often depicted as ghostly here. Okay, so Yurei are going to be like a Japanese form of undead. We'll kind of just take a note of that for now separately. Now... Jorogumo. Now, the thing with yokai is similar to the Shinto gods in a way, because there is just a shit ton of them that all do some interesting kind of unique things that they're famous for. So I could probably like look at a list of yokai for like a solid 100 or so and come across numerous examples of famous ones. That should be Yuki Onna, not Yuki Hime. Watch too much anime. Or not enough, apparently. Now... Yadagarasu is another one. We also have... What else do we have? Binbogami. Just bringing misfortune everywhere it kind of goes. Okay, I think that might be okay for now. There are definitely a lot more we can do with this kind of yokai system, but we're going to basically treat them similar to demons, because that's essentially what they are. So, yokai, races of demons with unique supernatural properties and powers. Cool. So, I think what we might do is limit it to just a few of these. So Kitsune, Yuki Onna, we're doing those for sure. Kappet and Tengu, Oni as well. Jorogumo. Yeah, the one I'm a little unsure right now is Tanuki, but I think having Tanuki will be good because it's more of a like a cuter, more mischievous, lesser well-known race. Yadagarasu I think are cool, but I can't really. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can make them like the servants of the Tengu or something. And now the Bimbigami were pretty neat as well. Maybe I won't list it for now, just in case. Yeah, I feel like that could be a problematic one, potentially, depending on how we want to do this. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, well that's 9 yokai, and if you've been kind of keeping up along with this, you know that I left the number 9 for this kind of thing we're building. So that might be good. Now, the yokai are going to be pretty kind of advanced race systems like the individual Shura clans and like the lesser demons in the lesser key that we're kind of building with. So I might not do anything too crazy here with them for now, but at the very least it's good to know that we've got a solid listing here for options that we kind of want to do stuff with here or there later on. With that said, I think that kind of covers a lot of what I've wanted to do with this Japanese folklore for now. So I think we're at a good place there. In the meantime, let's go brainstorm in China. So the number one thing we're going to want to do here is some kind of martial artist class. Cool. Now, aside from martial artists, what other kinds of ones do we want to have? There are, of course, like Taoism. Tell me more about Taoism, because I know Taoism's like a pretty major thing in a lot of Chinese media, often involving like spirits and spells and elements. Apart from that, yeah, so Tao is the way. Tao is the fundamental principle that underlies and unifies all aspects of the universe, represents the ultimate reality and source of all things. Wu Wei is the concept of non-action and effortless action, meaning to act in accordance with the natural flow of the Tao. Then we also have Yin and Yang, as well as Qi or Qi. I'm thinking, rather than using that as part of a kind of like spiritual magical thing, we can kind of tie that in with the martial artists aspects. And I think that's all we really need in terms of like coming up with a class archetype here, because it's basically like the archetype for monks in D&D, like using inner energy and chi to basically do what you want as you will with that there. So I think that's pretty much fine. Now let me just take down some of these notes. And I think I'm not too fussed about like finding a way to work with things here, so I've already pretty much got the idea in mind that I want to do something with breath for how these guys work, especially in terms of like meditating and striking with the control of your breath. So it's like maybe like breathing styles in Demon Slayer, as well as just like a lot of the classic meditation breathing techniques and a lot of woo-wah. But yeah, no, I think that's okay there for now. I don't think I really want to tie in with any additional religions with the Chinese aspect. Mostly because I want it to be a very martial arts based society. Cool. Now, Korea. What can we do with anything Korean based? Let's have a think. So, what kind of RPG classes could you make based on Japanese history, mythology, or society? So, unfortunately, Oh, I accidentally said Japanese instead of Korean. Whoops, don't shoot me. I was like, why is it telling me samurai and ninja? But I gotta get the culture right. Now, let's see what Korea actually has. So, Korea have Hwarang, elite warriors of the Silver Kingdom known for their martial prowess and noble ideals. And they have some traditional Korean weapons, like a Korean greatsword. Let me just check out what this looks like. Okay, basically a flat, straight blade. Shamans. Gisang, Guishin. Dongbangs, skeletons sages with deep knowledge. They got some interesting beasts, so what's the Hato? Okay, that reminds me a bit of the Quillen. Now, I don't know if that really has what I kind of want to cover in terms of some kind of unique class here. What it was Korea's historical national religion, if they had one at all. Okay, it seems like they've had a few different ones, like shamanism, Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity. Okay. Now, Buddhism and Taoism. Taoism is mostly like Taoism, I believe, but Buddhism isn't really something I've really gone into yet. Same with Confucianism, but I don't really know if I want to do something with Confucianism. Let's see. Tell me more about Buddhism and what kind of classes you could create in an RPG based on it. Now, I am pretty ignorant of a lot of Buddhism. But it seems Buddhism involves suffering a fair bit, as well as different paths. You could definitely do something interesting with this. It seems like there'll be a lot of like martial artist monk-based class, similar to the kind of Taoist ones. That said, maybe we can do something a little bit different with them. Okay, it seems like Buddhism also involves the samsara a fair bit. I might have been mixing up like Hinduism and Buddhism a bit before. Okay, maybe we'll skip on that for now. What kinds of legendary and or mythical beasts is Korea associated with? I might end up having to cut these out entirely. Dragons, night-owl foxes. I don't know if I can really do something here. Because I feel like Korea's culture ties in significantly with like China's and Japan's. Just because of the uniqueness of Korean history. I know Korea has some of its own like famous history, like the legendary goat admiral. Yeah, I don't know if I can do anything here with that. Okay, how about Vietnamese? So, what kinds of classes could one make in an RPG setting based on Vietnamese history, mythology, legends, religion? We'll see what kind of results we get here. I think this kind of just ties in a bit with the others as well. We're kind of getting to that point. Cool, so we've kind of got like... Yeah, I think we kind of got enough with the big three up there to do with Asia, and then we kind of got the Beastman Mongol Empire as well. So I'll kind of tie in a little bit here quickly. with some brainstorming. We'll say like the origin of the beast tribes around the world, question mark, the largest, most expansive, most united beastmen empire, which contests against and fights back against the humanoid nations around them. Cool. And honestly, there's so much I can kind of do with them there already that I'm not too fussed about expanding further on that kind of area for now. We already have a pretty idea of what's going on and how we're going to handle that. Cool, but yeah, we are going to get a lot of inspiration from the classic Mongol empires of old for our little purposes there, so I'm not really all too fussed about that. Now, with that said, let me think. Because we might want to consider like what other races we might have on the little eastern continent here. So what I'm going to do is bring up another little brainstorming column here. And I'm just going to go ahead and review my background notes. Because I kind of want to take a look at, rather than human cultures, I want to look at some of the other races' cultures. So, probably not going to have any kind of ogres here, maybe. I want to kind of stay away from a lot more Western stuff, like goblins and kobolds and elves and whatnot. But I think, honestly, with the amount of stuff we have going on, with some of this stuff, we might have some kind of like Eastern dragons, Eastern style undead. We already have the yokai and the shura, which are going to play such major roles, along with the beastmen, that I don't think we're going to really need any other races there, because unlike the Abyss, for example, which we're going to have the central continent, or like it gets connected to by the central continent, which is basically yeah, just like the giant pit of like demons upon demons upon demons. A lot of the yokai in particular, they're going to be out and about in the physical world themselves, rather than any kind of spiritual world, along with the kind of beastmen empire. So I think we're pretty set there for the most part with that. But that said, I think that's pretty much done in terms of like getting a general overview of what I kind of want with this Eastern Empire for now. So we could think about doing some kind of like martial artist temple slash school in the kind of Chinese inspired area, which we probably will do, because I really want to come up with like our own little cultivation system here. And that's going to tie in pretty well. But it's basically like being the one big kind of Eastern school, similar to how we've got like the Wizard and Knight school on the central continent. I'm not sure if any of the other ones would really have their own schools. They probably have their own like factions and organizations, but might end up doing some kind of like feudal house system for Japan, like in the Warring States era. So let's see. Same with the Chinese, maybe, because those were some pretty big areas. So feudal Japan and China, martial artist, temple slash school. I don't think we'll have any kind of like massive organizations in the Indian nation, apart from maybe like their gothic temples or whatnot, but I think they're pretty good there. Now, with that said, I think what I might do, that might be a good place to leave the east there for now. I'm thinking what we can do next is maybe revisit a brief passover for the northern continent, which is the OG original thing that I always kind of tinkered with, but now that we've kind of fleshed a bit more out around the rest of the world, kind of got a good idea of how we're putting things together for a general overview, just to help prevent us doing too much overlap between kind of any one or two areas. Since I thought a bit more about the northern continent along with the central and eastern continent in comparison to the southern and the western, that might be a good place to touch on next to flesh out a similar overview. So I'm thinking I'll do that, and similar to what we just did with the east, and then maybe after that I could do the same with the southern and western continents, and we've kind of finished like divulging what kind of cultures we want there, where, with what kind of power systems, and just make sure we don't have, again, any of that overlap between anywhere. Then we can really begin fleshing things out in a lot more detail without having to worry about stepping on our own toes anywhere else. But yeah, I think for now I might take a bit of a break and take care of some errands. So I'll probably end the stream here for today. Bit of a shorter, sweeter one, but hopefully it was all good all the same. If I can, I might come back later on in the day if I have time. If not, I'll probably resume things next week. But yeah, so again, the Monday and Thursday are going to be the guaranteed streams for now. I'm thinking every second Friday I can probably get a quick one in too, and then Tuesdays and Wednesdays for me I might be able to do some spontaneous ones here and there, depending on what my schedule is like, because those days are filled in for now. But yeah, in any case, since I'm on the opposite side of the planet from anyone watching, none of those days or times probably make any sense to you. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap things up here for now, but I will catch you guys sooner than later, hopefully. Bye bye for now.